In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to build an Android and an iOS app from start to finish that fetches news data from several APIs. We'll be using the Flutter framework and INTELLIJ as our IDE. And I have the app running in the simulators, and you can see it running that both of these apps are running side by side. After the project builds, delete all the boilerplate code except the material import statement. Import Dart async so that we can work with asynchronous methods. Import Dart convert so that we can decode JSON, and import the HTTP package so that we can make HTTP requests. Head over to newsapi.org and sign up for a free API key. I signed up already, and you can use my API key. However, if there are more than 1,000 requests per day, the app may crash. Each news API has a unique URL. We will store these URLs in string variables. Each app must have a main method. This is an entry point to our app. Inside, we will call run app and pass in new material app and set our home screen. You can think of screens as different classes. We will create a class called category and extend stateless widget. A stateless widget is one that doesn't require a mutable state. Right-click on the bulb to add the missing override, and you want to return a new scaffold. This scaffold is going to have an app bar. We will give it a title, call it news, and center the title. Run the app and see how it looks. Great! Once you are up and running, we need to call a method that will fetch data from the API. We will create a future type function that will allow us to fetch data from the post. This method is going to return a list, and we can call it whatever we want. I'll call it fetch data, and it will require a string input. This method is an asynchronous method, so we need the async keyword. We will do the request and store it in a variable called response. And you'll notice that we pass in the URL of the API. Next, we will want to return the decoded response. If I don't use the key articles, it's going to return everything. Everything is a map, and inside of this map we have our list. Think of it this way. A JSON tree that begins with a curly brace is a map, and a JSON tree that begins with a square bracket is a list. Now let's declare some variables outside of the main method to store the list that we will get back from the server. We will need three variables: provider1, provider2, provider3. We will make all of them private by using the underscore prefix. We need to make sure that we set our entry point as async, and this allows us to use our asynchronous method. We're going to call fetch data and pass in our URLs, and we're going to store that information in the variables that we created earlier. This part isn't necessary, but we're going to create a for loop to loop through the items in our list and display them to the console. We're going to use bracket notation to retrieve all the titles in our list. So stop the app if it's running and run it again and look for the items to display in the console. So at 9:32 a.m. on the 30th of May 2018, the US economic growth revised down to 2.2% rate in Q1. That means that it's working, but nothing is going to be displayed on the screen. We can stop the app and delete that for loop. Let's go to the categories class and create some raised buttons. We're going to place them in a center widget. Inside of the center widget, we're going to have a column. Inside of this column, we're going to space the widgets evenly. The column widget is going to have some children, and like I said before, they're going to be raised buttons. We'll give the buttons some padding and set the color to red. We're going to add text to the button, get top US headlines. Next, we can add some style. We can set the font size to 21 and the color to white. Test the app and see how it runs. You will notice that the button is grayed out because we haven't specified a method as yet. I want that when this button is clicked, it will take you to another screen that has data from the News API. So we now need to create that class. Let's call our class Headlines and extend Stateless Widget. Click on the bulb to insert the missing override and let's return a new scaffold. We will add an app bar like before and create a title named Headlines and center it. Return to the onPress method in the categories class. We're going to use navigator.push to take us to the new screen. One cool thing about this method is that it allows you to pass forward data from the previous screen. Run the app and see how it works. Now we need to go to our Headlines class and find a way to place the data on the screen. We're going to use the listview.builder widget. Add some padding and set the item count to underscore provider.length. Next, we need to pass context and set a variable that corresponds to the position of the items in our array. The list view is going to have a title, and we're going to access the raw values of the list contained in provider 1 to populate the text field. We want to access the titles of all the articles. We can add some style to our text field. Let's give the text a font size of 20 and let's make it bold. Let's run the app. Sometimes you may get some errors that may be caused by a missing semicolon, comma, or parentheses. It can be very frustrating sometimes. Everything seems to be in order. So let's add a subtitle. The subtitle is going to contain text just like the title field. Instead of accessing the title, we're going to access the description. The styling, however, is going to be different. We're going to make the font size smaller and the font style will be italicized. Change the color to gray and run the app. We should probably add a divider to separate these articles. Remember that Flutter is a relatively new language, so expect to see some changes in the future. I have searched countless articles on how to add a divider to a list view builder. The way how this solution works is that if the position in our list is an odd number, it's going to return a divider. But it's only going to return the articles at position 1 and 3 and 5, basically all the odd positions. Now, to work around this, we can create a final variable and call it index, and divide the value in the position by 2 and round it up to the nearest whole number. The Flutter creators could have said, maybe a divider would work really well in a list view builder. Maybe if you share this video a lot, we might see that in an update. So run the app and let's see how it looks. Our app is looking pretty decent at this point, but we still have two other news providers that we would love to access. Let's create two more buttons, and this is very easy to do. Just copy and paste. Obviously, you will have to change the titles of these buttons. In Flutter, it is possible to send data to a new screen. We're going to go to the headlines class and create a variable to store the data that we want to pass forward. We will make it final. Then we will create a constructor and make the provider a required field. In the listview.builder, instead of passing in provider 1, provider 2, and provider 3, just pass in provider. Return to the raise buttons in the category class, and in the navigator.push, we're going to set the providers. When the first button is pushed, data from the first provider is going to be accessed. The second button will access the second provider, and the third button will access the last provider. Run the app and see if it works. If you liked the video, hit like. Hit dislike if you didn't. Subscribe to see more videos on mobile app development. And thank you for watching.